We come this morning to the time in our church service where we want to take a few minutes to bring God's Word to bear upon the hearts of our young people, of our kids. And as we continue reading this morning through the Jesus Storybook Bible, and we just sang a song that the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ the Lord. And you know where we get that song from? I mean, not who wrote it, but the message of it. It's from the Bible itself. What we've been talking about from the start of this is that the Bible is a book written by a bunch of different people over the course of many, many different years and different genres, right? You have Psalms, you have teaching, you have the Gospels, you have the book of Revelation, you have poetry, but all of it, by the power of God, is about one thing. And it's not about rules, right? We've determined that. It's not about rules for how to live, nor is it about certain people who we ought to emulate. Like be like David, be like Daniel, No, it's none of that. It's about Jesus Christ. From Genesis to Revelation, the church's one foundation is Jesus Christ the Lord. And so we've been reading about God's story, about Jesus. And this morning we come to an account that we read about in Genesis chapter 11. You may remember last week we were reading about Noah's Ark, and how God, because of sin, was wiping out all of creation. Everyone died except for Noah and his family and two of each animal on the ark. And it was kind of because man continued in sin against God, he was going to start fresh. Well, let's see how things go. Does that make everything better? Genesis chapter 11, the story is entitled A Giant Staircase to Heaven. Noah and his family lived in the land, and his children had children, and those children had more children. And then those children had even more. So you get the picture. Until finally, there were lots of people on the earth once more. Now back then, everyone spoke exactly the same language. So you didn't need to learn Japanese or Swahili or Chinese or anything else, because you could simply say hello and everybody in the world knew exactly what you meant. Well, one day, all of these people were talking and they came up with an idea. Let's build ourselves a beautiful city to live in. It can be our home, and we'll be safe in it forever and ever. And then they had another idea. Inside this city, let's build a really tall tower to reach up to heaven. All right? See kind of the picture there? All these people. Now, Noah's family has now repopulated the earth, and they're going to build their own city and a way to get to heaven. Yes, they said. We'll say, look at us up here, and everyone will look at us. And we will look down on them, and then we'll know we are something special. In fact, we'll be like God. We'll be famous, we'll be safe, we'll be happy, and everything will be perfect. So these people got to work, and brick by brick, the tower grew higher and higher until it soared above the city, touching the sky. And then they built stairs in the tower to climb to the very top. It was almost like a giant staircase to heaven. Look, they cheered. We're the ones. We've done it. See what we can do with our own hands. They were quite pleased with themselves. But you know who was not pleased with them? Anyone want to guess? God. God was not pleased with them. God could see what they were doing. They were trying to live without Him. But God knew that wasn't going to work. And if they kept on like this, they were only going to destroy themselves. So God stopped their plans. You see the big tower they're trying to build up into the clouds as far as the eye can see, trying to get to heaven. One morning they went to work as usual, but on this morning everything was different. Their words were all new and funny. You see, God had given each person a completely different language. Suddenly, no one understood what anyone else was saying. So someone would say, "How do you do?" And the other person thought they were saying, "How ugly you are." It wasn't funny. You could actually be saying something nice like, "This is such a lovely morning, isn't it?" And then get a punch in the nose because they thought you were saying, "Hush up, you're boring." You couldn't even say pardon to check to see if you'd heard right because nobody understood the words that each other were saying. So as you can imagine, it wasn't easy to work together after that. In fact, people were always quarreling and fighting and getting in a dreadful muddle and becoming grumpier and grumpier until finally they were just too angry with one another to keep on building. They just had to stop. See them throwing bricks at each other? It's gotta hurt, right? I mean, you ever wanted to throw a brick at your brother? Have you ever thrown a brick at your brother? A rock? Are you okay? Did it hit you? Oh my goodness. So we understand what's going on here, right? Well, after that, people scattered all over the world, which is why today, how we've ended up with so many countries and so many different languages. It all goes back to this. You see, God knew, however high they tried to reach, however hard they tried themselves, people could never get back to heaven by themselves. Why were they out of heaven? Because of what? Sin, the Garden of Eden. God kicked them out. And God says, no matter how hard you try, you can't get to where I am. Because the way back to heaven was never a staircase. It was a person. People could never reach up to heaven. So, heaven has to come down to them. And you know what? One day it would. And you know who that one is? It's Jesus, who came from heaven down to us to make a way for us to go back to God. Isn't that a wonderful thing? It's all about Jesus.